The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom. The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom. The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom. The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom. The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's David Palmer, the Leo King, and we are here with Will Nichols. So he's an awesome astrologer. I love having him as a friend in my life, and more importantly, I truly want to do a video about the divine masculine. It's been something that I've been meaning to do, and if there was one person in the whole world, it would be Will Nichols. How you doing today, Will?
Oh, brother, I'm so good. Thanks for having me on, man. It's always great talking to you off the camera. On the camera, it's fun too.
I love it because that's what we do, is like literally as an astrologer, you got to have that person that you're always hanging out with on the phone and going over things with. And with you, you're that guy.
Yeah. No, it's been nice. It's been nice knowing you, brother. And I'm excited to talk about everything that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to cover not only divine masculine, how that applies with the astrology. I'd love to ask you just about you and your astrology as well. But then I also want to talk about the astrology community and spirituality at large.
Let's do it all up.
Yeah, so why don't we just start about you first? Why don't you let everybody know who you are, what kind of astrology you do, and so forth?
Awesome. Well, yeah, my name's Will Nichols. I have been into astrology for about 8 years now. I've been practicing astrology for about 7 years now, and I've been doing this full time for about 4-ish years now. So yeah, my style of astrology, I mean, it's typically esoteric astrology, which is more operating out of the soul-centered level. So looking at the soul-centered perspective instead of just the personality. Like, I'm more interested in, you know, the evolution of consciousness and how we grow as individuals, and also how we have relationships with other individuals, because in my opinion, astrology is the science of relationships, and that's the coolest part about it, is get to see how it all works and fits together, and how we interact with the world and how the world interacts with us, and how that all comes together. So yeah, man, super excited to be here, and it's been a continually growing process. I've got an amazing person named David Palmer that I used to watch all his videos and look up to and be like, damn, this guy's actually doing this full time. I can do this full time. And here we are.
Yeah, well, it's great, man, because you have that inspiration, and that's what caught me about you. Because astrology is great, and there's so much of it out there now. But
yeah,
I was like, finally, there's another guy out there who's just rocking the camera and inspiring people. And then I'm like, of course he's an Aries.
Yep, exactly. No other person, you know?
Yeah,
Sun,
it
Venus,
was
Aries
nice.
conjunction.
No, it was nice, man, because that's what I love about you, is like when you're on that camera and you're on your Instagram, like it is like, rah, the real thing, like, and getting down. And, you know, I wanted to ask you, you talk a lot about sexuality a lot too, and how important that is.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's been a big focus over the last couple of years. I've been studying Tantra for about 5 years, so that's naturally been interwoven into my astrological practice. Not so much exploring sexuality just through astrology, but learning how to understand our sexual energy and what that actually means, to use it, to wield it, to discover it, because we're just used to thinking that sex is just putting a thing in a hole, and it's far from that. There's many layers to using this sexual energy, because sexual energy and sex energy in general is the energy that created this universe. So when we learn how to wield that, we too become creators. And so yeah, naturally that's kind of been something that I just progressively started talking about after I've been practicing it for a while. And yeah, it's something that I'm really passionate about, because frankly, we're in a very weird time right now where the majority of the world is very sexually repressed, and we're taught to either buy into unhealthy sexual habits and sexual means of expression, or we're just taught to suppress it completely. And middle ground here. So that's where I'm I guess you could say, like, discussing and expressing, and what I'm most passionate about expressing.
Well, I love that. A lot of your stuff on Instagram, you'll put a lot of stories up, really asking people and showing people at the same time, what are you doing with this energy? And are you using it in a positive way, or is it actually doing a detrimental effect to you in your life? Which I think is really important. I would say that you are much more beautifully proper about it, where I'm kind of the trashy, throw out the weird sexual stuff.
Yeah, I would say so. I remember the first time we were talking about this, and I think it was like our first or second phone call, and you were saying you were just like teasing at, because I just talked about in ejaculation, and and you're like, you haven't blown a load in like how many months now?
I know that sounds like something I would say, but that kind of ties into the divine masculine right now. So I think that this is a very hot topic right now about the divine feminine, but there's not a lot of talk about the divine masculine. And I feel that after our talk the other night, and our talks for over the last year and more, that we really have started to, I think, feel what that's holding, the space-wise at least. So I want to get from you, what do you feel about the divine masculine right now?
Yeah, I feel like right now this world seems to be in a state of chaos. So when we talk about the divine masculine, we're not talking about patriarchy. We're not talking about forcing the will of a man, or just trying to man up. It's more about embracing the natural order of things. Whereas feminine is all about flow and free flowing and operating out of the feelings. Masculine is about being that center, still pillar. And that's what the masculine embodies. That's what the masculine represents, is this pillar of stillness. And that, like, the masculine is the container for the feminine to flow around. And therefore we have this, establishment of order and chaos all at once. And that's where the masculine fits in there. But yeah, we're at a time where in this world, we're not really used to embracing that. We're kind of shunned away from the, like, accepting and embracing the masculine. We're all taught to, embrace our femininity and embrace the feminine traits within ourselves, but we're not taught how can we be still strong pillars of masculine essence. How can we hold our ground? How can we create more order in our lives? How can we just create some structure to this, like, free flowing world, which is kind of where we're at right now. It's like we're in that in between part of like freely expressing ourselves, the free love, kind of like what the 60s was. But the 60s is actually a great example of what free feminine expression is without any order, right? And it was just kind of chaos, where, like, they had pros and cons, obviously, but at the end of the day, we're here now, and like this world is not what, if the 60s actually achieved what it was supposed to achieve, we wouldn't be like in the same state. So we need both sides. We can't just lean towards the free flowing feminine expression. I'm going to say what's on my mind. I'm going to say all this stuff. It's like, it doesn't mean that you're not expressing yourself, but it just means that you're creating that heart mind coherence instead of just going from the heart or just going from the mind. It's that like balance, and that's what balancing both polarities within ourselves is all about.
No, I love that you say that, because I think there is something about this balance right now. But I feel that the masculine here is to hold space for this feminine to rise, and that it knows through being really, and of course, a lot of people look at it like the patriarchy with divine masculine, which there is a lot of credibility to that. There's also credibility to of a lot of different ways. But there's this thing where the masculine has to really just hold this ground to watch and help lift the feminine up as far as support wise, not actually, having to feel like it's some job to like pull the feminine up for it. I don't believe that that's what it is at all. I think that this is about support. I think that this is about encouragement. I think that this is about being there. And I think that this is about holding a very strong space and a safe space for the feminine to rise. Because I've had conversations with my mother even just recently, like she'll walk down the street with her dog and she'll see a guy walking down the street and she'll think about different habits about, should I go down that street again? Should I not? And these are things that men really have not had to experience in their lives. I mean, unless I walk down West Hollywood, that's a true story. Like RuPaul, like came up to me and said some really weird stuff. So, it's a really weird thing. I've experienced it in West Hollywood, just in everywhere else, no. But I can say that I think that this divine masculine as well, what I've noticed through the astrology community is 85% of the audience is women and 15% is male. If I do readings, I would say 90 to 95% of the readings are feminine, and then maybe 5 or 10 masculine. So really, it's like, I feel male astrologers that have this divine masculine are in a way here to honor, recognize the feminine and say, we've got your back. We see it in you and you can do it and you're safe to do it. And also there is an inspirational part of like, you got this, and to feel, I think it's about feeling safe.
Exactly. And it's about basically creating the space where the feminine can trust us again, because like that trust has been broken over how many thousands of years of the church and, just patriarchal kind of structures where, it hasn't been the healthiest expression of masculinity. Like you can't wipe out the feminine. That's not the answer. And just in the same way, you can't wipe out the masculine, which is, you kind of see the extremist feminist type of perspective where it is that it's not this equality, which they talk about, which is real feminism, by the way. So I'm not hating on the feminists whatsoever. I'm just saying there's that extreme end where it's like, the complete, like, men ain't shit, all this stuff, men are trash. And then there's the other side of it where men are like, oh, like, the kind of like the pickup artist community versus the extreme feminist community. It's like those two polarities are what are the battlegrounds for what's going on. But then, the divine masculine, the divine feminine embodiments are right in the middle, where they're learning to harmonize with each other. They're learning to the feminine is learning to trust the masculine. The masculine is learning how to become the best possible embodiment and establish and create the best container for the feminine to flow, not to like control and suppress her, but to just, allow her to do her thing while still creating a deeper sense of harmony and a deeper sense of order. So, yeah, we've had a lot of experiences over the past couple of thousand years where it hasn't been the healthiest expression of femininity. It hasn't been the healthiest expression of masculinity. Both of our energies have been suppressed. We haven't been learning how to actually, integrate both polarities within ourselves. And that's what's happening right now, is we're learning how to do that. And that's why being a masculine embodiment, it doesn't mean that we're not we're not feminine at all. In fact, like, for most of my life, I'm a Pisces rising, Cancer moon. Like femininity was a large part of my expression, just the creative, dreamy. I was a musician, I was in bands and shit. So that was always like a huge part of my life. But once I learned how to embrace and embody the masculine essence, which is so important, especially as a man, but also as a woman too. But a lot of times what happens is, if you aren't, as a woman, embracing the healthiest potential for your femininity, you're going to overcompensate with a deeper rooted embodiment of masculinity, where you get this aggressive kind of women that are kind of manifesting in this world, where we're now forcing women, not forcing women, but it's kind of insinuating that women go into corporate jobs and women are now in corporate environments, which is, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But the problem is, if you don't have that balance within you, you create an imbalance, and that imbalance ultimately in the long run can really like mess you up. In the same way, we have men where we're like, express your feelings, express yourself, you know, you are so safe. It's like, at the same time, men, we need to know that, you know, emotions are meant to be felt and expressed, but they're crybabies overnight. Women wouldn't be very attracted to men because of that, you know. So it's about balancing both sides of it and learning to be the strongest embodiment that you possibly can of your own polarity. So, you know, us as masculine embodiments, it doesn't mean that we're not feminine, you know, it doesn't mean that we don't get our feelings hurt, and it doesn't mean that we don't have emotions to express. In fact, it should mean that we can easily express our emotions, because we can trust our own inner masculine to hold the space for us. Likewise, feminine are the same way. You know, as a feminine embodiment, if you're a divine feminine embodiment, you want to be learning and expressing your feminine energy to the best of your ability. And when you can do that, then the masculine flows. It's all, you know, yin yang.
No, it's very
negative,
true. I think
white.
that
It's all two sides of the same coin.
You're hitting really good points here. I think that one of the favorite points that I had from you is one that, you know, there is something about, like in Carl Jung's work, the shadow of the feminine, the shadow of the masculine, and we usually see the opposite. So when a masculine gets hurt, it actually turns real feminine, really emotional, really, you know, like hermetic, and really can go into a really place of despair. And then the shadow of the feminine is very masculine. And actually, it's ironic, because both sides of the masculine and feminine shadow is like the dark side of the feminine aspect is that all men are toxic and they're trash and they're just dominant and they are not thinking about people. And then the dark side of the masculine is this: all women are out to take from me. They're just here to just, I do everything for them, and da 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 da. And then so that dark side of the feminine is reacting usually in a sense of wanting to be dominant, wanting to be this extreme force. And it's like, if I think about the astrology, right, we have to use the astrology, in my opinion, as the way to understand these forces. When you have Mars ruling masculine, its points of its dignity is Aries and Scorpio, right? It's a penetrative, direct force. It's an action-oriented force. Its fall positions are in Cancer, emotional, you know, receptive, like nurturing element. And with Venus, it's the opposite, right? It's like Venus is at home in Taurus, this receiving, this creating of beauty, this creating of nurturement through physical appearance. It's where makeup comes in, and high heels, and, you know, lotions that we don't do. And, you know, but of course, as people find both sides, they can integrate both. But then of course it's at its other home is in Libra, where it's about finding a balance between people and wanting to find union and wanting to find this quality that I really feel has an artistic element more than just more of a receptive. It's a masculine force too, which is weird. Libra's masculine, and then Scorpio's feminine with Mars, you know, like the more internal, emotional, sexual integration of direction and receiving, but also pushing, right? Because Mars is a pusher. But then you have Venus at its fall position in Virgo, where it's like getting criticized or criticizing things, or more importantly, being too perfect, or it needs to look a certain way, or it needs to be too pure. And then it also is at detriment over in Scorpio, where it gets too emotional or too stuck on things or can't let go. And then Mars at its detriment is in Libra, which is where Venus is at a home. So we get these really weird things where we have to learn how to integrate both within ourselves. And when you use astrology to kind of look at yourself and where you're having issues with stuff in your life of masculine or feminine energies, just go to the astrology and be like, what am I acting out? If I'm acting out that I have emotional issues that I don't know, you know what? Go to that Cancerian Mars in the fall. You probably are not feeling comfortable in yourself. You don't feel confident in yourself. You don't feel supported in who you are. You could go in that way. If you're having issues in relationships, okay, and you're a man, a lot of it is learning to integrate the feminine and learning to integrate, this beautiful way of like harmonizing and being fair and learning to see the other person's side, not your own. But if you're in a receptive energy and you're not feeling your life going anywhere, well, a lot of it is going to be Mars and Aries. Like, you know what? It's time to identify yourself. Stop saying you like to help people. Why do you want to help people? How are you going to help people? And who are you to even help people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why astrology is such a great tool, is because ourselves, which is just going to use to justify our behaviors. It's something that we're going to use to grow. It's something that we're actually going to use to make ourselves better and say, oh, here's the kind of, action of what I was.
Are you on the chat? No, I think you're right. Somebody in the chat had brought up too that Venus was exalted in Pisces, which is true. And then Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So, if you start to look at the masculine, its exalted position is career, goals. And Venus's exaltation is dreams and going with the flow and connecting with spirit and with connecting to the fantasy. And so they're very opposite energies, but they need each other to blend all those together. What's going on with him? Oh, he can't hear me? We're having a technical difficulty. But it's interesting to look at all these different ways of how it's done while we're getting Will back. Just have Will come back in and out, and I'll talk for a second. I think that it's interesting because I've been wanting to talk about this for a minute, and it's hard. I think that we're in a world right now where it feels like it has to be this one-sided thing, but it really doesn't. I think that it's an integration of both. But recently there's been a lot of energy that's been coming out where, as the feminine is rising, there's been a lot of quarrels between the feminine rising. You got me back, Will?
Yep.
So I'm opening up Pandora's box.
Do it up. Let's go. I told you. What did I say before we did this?
I said
if we don't trigger people, we're doing it wrong.
I was going to say that there's been a lot of quarrels in the feminine energy rising up between other feminine to feminine. It's almost like this competitive mode. I mean, if you just look at Instagram or YouTube, there becomes this feminine kind of attack on everyone, or they're trying to better than everyone else. Where I notice in the masculine community, we're just like, I don't give a fuck about how many followers I have. I just want to put out the info. But then in feminine, they base a lot. I'm not saying all. We're just bringing up, like, there's a common theme that I'm seeing around, that it's about how many followers you have, or how extreme the story looks and the aesthetic, and everybody almost freaking out about, like, I wasn't seen on the algorithm, or or like men get more gigs than feminine, But I also want to remind the feminine that 85% of the spiritual community is feminine. So as a feminine in this work, there's something about having to bring up this more, it is a little bit more competitive for a feminine, whereas there's not a lot of divine masculine pushing this energy. And of course, if we use the natural order of being a human being, it's a lot easier sometimes as a masculine to watch a feminine or a feminine to watch a masculine. And so a lot of the feminine energy becomes kind of locked into competing. And I think that the masculine is just here to hold the ground and also remind the feminine that this isn't about them or the system or Facebook or YouTube or any of this. It's just about owning what you are and doing it as best as you can and just focusing on the message and just getting it done. And to not come into looking at other outer sources as the issue. What'd you say? Oh, he might be having internet issues. Yeah. In Canada, they have the worst internet. I know that because my ex-wife's from Canada. They don't have like fiber optic yet. They don't. And even their cell phone bills, I don't know if everyone knows this in Canada, they pay like 3 times as much as we do, and they don't even get unlimited data. You get like 8 gigs or like 5 gigs. So internet's hard in Canada.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
No, yeah, no, it's honestly stupid. And the fact that Alexander Graham Bell, the guy who invented the telephone, was Canadian, and Bell was the first telephone company, and it's a Canadian company, and they charge the most is just absurd.
Yeah, like a cell phone there, you get, they're like throwing it out like you're getting the best deal ever for like 5 gigs of data a month.
Oh yeah. Or 10 gigs of shared data between like 4 people. It's like, y'all don't stream Netflix.
And then you go to use Wi-Fi, and they don't offer fiber optic at 1 gig a second here.
No. Or if they have been integrating fiber optic, but it's more expensive, obviously.
Yeah, but I don't know if you probably lost me there as I was going into my feminine kind of quarrels going on. But without me even having to repeat it, just where are you at with that?
Yeah, so the irony is when feminine energy is clashing, it's masculine. It's in its masculine expression. So it's not in its feminine expression, because feminine is unconditional love and unconditional reception of all, of others. Whereas masculine is projected energy outwards, right? That's what masculine energy is. It's projection energy. It's assertive energy. And in the lower levels, it's clashing. It's fighting for what we believe in. But yeah, femininity is not fighting. It's not quarreling. So that's the funniest part, is that a lot of people who call themselves divine feminine embodiments yet continually are in quarrels and are fighting with other people. It's like, it's not really a feminine embodiment there, love.
I like that, because it's very true. But it's almost like the divine masculine in a negative way. A lot of them, especially in the spiritual community, are almost becoming the feminine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem is and this is why, why we get along so well, is because as much as we are very spiritual people, both us individually and when we're together, we both have an understanding of the problem with the woo-woo in the community, and this airy-fairy shit that a lot of even the guys and the male embodiments are talking about, which is like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, angels, starseeds, light workers, all that fun stuff, but at the same time, we're here. Like, let's talk about what's here as well, and integrate that. If we can integrate both of those things, that's great, because that's what balances. It's not just saying, oh, like, I can't see auras yet, so I'm not spiritual, or like just, some crap like that, or, your guides are telling me. And it's like, that's all fine. And, we're both really intuitive people, so we get it. But at the same time, we're also like pretty grounded people. I'm a Pisces rising. I ground as much as I can. Not really grounded today with the Pisces moon, but anyways, yeah. So in that same regard, like, it's like we're it's all about balance. It's all about harmony.
No, you
And
bring
when
up a
we
good
can
point.
create that, that's what matters.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is too, like the masculine is here to remember to just stay in definition of yourself, and to also not be afraid to be yourself, right? Because in the spiritual community, everybody starts wearing the same clothes, or the males start to become like girls, and women are attracted to masculine energy. Like, you have facial hair, I have facial hair. There's like a whole thing about not being afraid to be like, what the hell, and be like a masculine, and still work on, like me, I race and I work on a car, and I could be talking astrology and then be talking about, like with you, about just some crazy ass shit just as random in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And having that balance is important, because if we're too up there, we're missing the big picture that's here, because the big picture isn't up there. It's not out there. It's here. It's whatever's here now. And that's what's creating the big picture. That's what's allowing the big picture to take place. And if we can balance that macro and micro perspective, that's what matters. You know, that's really what matters, is having both of them at the same time, ideally.
I have one more question for you regarding this subject. How do you feel ever since, especially in the last couple of years, especially when we saw Jupiter in Scorpio, we saw like the Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer from NBC getting thrown off. So we saw like this abuse of the masculine, and whether it was you know, I guess you could say rape, or you could say taking it too far, or forcing themselves on women. It's created a context, I feel, as a divine masculine, where, you know, our whole role is to engage the feminine, but it's also created a large, weird gap between then the feminine kind of becoming the masculine, and being the one that chooses now, like I'm going to make the move because that makes me feel safe. And then two, it makes masculine afraid to make a move, because it's like, is this person going to say like I did anything wrong by just naturally wanting to kiss you and it felt right? Like, this is how high school was when I was in the 90s. Like, it was like, I want to kiss you, I'm going to kiss you. And it was like, we both felt that. And there's an intuition between that. It's like, now you almost have to like order it like a number one at McDonald's. Like, may I have a kiss? Like, for, you know?
Yeah, please.
Please?
No, it's true. But what was your question?
Just how you feel about all that, or what insight you have.
Yeah, I think Jupiter and Scorpio specifically last year was like really powerful for bringing out and blowing up, as we've seen many times over, all the hidden BS, you know. And Jupiter transits are important to like mundane astrology and global astrology, because frankly, like, I mean, I was reading like the last time Jupiter hit the south node was like the Great Depression. So, you know, like Jupiter has a big influence on where the collective scope of world events are taking place. And that being said, all this is coming to the surface because, frankly, I mean, we as a society have gotten to the point where we had to make it so uncomfortable for ourselves to actually change what we were doing. And that was the problem, is like you were saying, like, yeah, in the 90s, you could just go up to people and kiss people. I mean, you still can do that. But at the same time now, there's a greater risk that you're going to get slapped, or you're going to be like told that, you know, oh, this person took advantage of me or something like that as well. But again, it's just about awareness. Whereas like even in the 80s and 90s, like, yeah, the spiritual community was still blossoming, and the New Age movement has been blossoming since like pretty much the beginning of the 20th century. But at the same time, now we're in a place where we can balance both of those energies. We have the opportunity. We've never been in a better opportunity to balance these energies. And with that being said, when we do balance our own energy, and that's, by the way, all that matters, our own energy, no one else's energy. Like, no one else has to change. No one else has to balance. Or it's like the whole excuse that like, oh, you're not in alignment, or you're not. It's like, no, you're the only one who needs to change. And when you change, everything else changes and falls into place, because you're the one creating this whole little picture that you're perceiving in your outer world. But yeah, to bring it back to the point, all this hidden crap that's coming up right now of men taking advantage of women, And by the way, in Hollywood, it goes both ways. Women taking advantage of little boys as well. Like, it's all messed up in that way too. It's just that's honestly I mean, I don't, Hollywood is
Yeah, there's a
pretty
lot
much
of
based
MILFs
off
out
of that.
there.
Yeah. Yes, that's the point that I was getting to. No, but actually, it does go both ways though. Where now, yeah, and I like what you said about that, because in this day and age, consent is a really big thing, and that's never really been a thing in the past. Men have always taken what we wanted, whether that's meant sex, whether that's meant woman, whether that's meant riches, whether that's meant, like slaying people on the battlefield, whatever. We have just always taken what we wanted. Now, that's just the raw masculine in his form, going out there and doing his thing. But even as masculine embodiments now, it's not just raw masculine, it's masculine that's balanced and harmonized with the feminine. Doesn't mean that I'm an overly feminine person, and by the way, that's totally fine, but it does mean that when I can embody and balance my own masculine energy, the feminine just flows into place. And in the same way, when you as a woman or a feminine embodiment, when you can balance your feminine energy and like get it in sync, the masculine can harmonize, because that's really what we're craving. When we as guys get butthurt about something that our partner's doing or something that someone else in the underworld is doing, it's because we're too much in our feminine. We have to bring ourselves back to center. We have to bring ourselves back into alignment. Doesn't mean we have to shut down the feeling center. It means we need to feel it, but we need to feel it from a level of observation. It's not just like feeling and pouring your heart out all the time. And trust me, I'm a Cancer Moon, Pisces rising. I've learned the hard lesson of doing that over and over again, So, but it's about feeling safe and comfortable to do that, because you've built yourself up enough to create a container for yourself to freely express yourself in that way. And the same thing has to happen in feminine embodiments worldwide, where you can just be so in your feminine that the masculine part of you flows, and that it comes into balance just instantaneously. It's effortlessly. Doesn't mean that it doesn't take any mental focus whatsoever, because frankly in this day and age we're very unfocused people, and that is the root of a lot of our suffering. But that does mean that when you, for example, if you're a woman and you're getting agitated at what other women are doing or what men are doing or whatever, and you're getting into this like toxic mindset, you have to realize that in that moment you're not in your feminine, you're in your masculine. You're fully in your masculine. You're getting aggressive. You're reacting. Reaction is a masculine quality. So when we can understand where we're at, and that's really, it all just comes back down to this one point, which is when we have awareness about what's going on within us, everything else can flow from there. But it has to start with awareness. It has to start with that awareness of, where am I right now? Where am I operating out of right now? Am I operating out of a place of presence? Or am I reacting to my outer circumstances? Because that's all, the only thing that's going to do is bring us more and more and more of what we don't want. And we're going to keep running into the same people. We're going to keep going in through the same relationships. We're going to keep repeating the same patterns, because that's all that we're reacting to. But when we respond to life, life responds to us. And life responds to us in the highest way at all times. But when we react to life, life says, oh, you want to put your focus there? Okay, let me give you more of that. And that kind of synergistic dynamic that occurs is precisely why a lot of people are suffering, why a lot of people are so unfocused of the process of how this is all taking place. And because of that, we get too immersed in this kind of unconscious state where we're so used to, like a lot of women nowadays, because they're empowered and they've never had more freedom to do whatever they want to do, which is great, by the way. But because of that, they can also easily slip into the unconscious aspects of themselves. And likewise, men, when we are, shunned, by the way, men have been taking a beating the last few years, okay? Like a beating. And that's no way. That's no way to respond. And honestly, you want to take it way, way back. The reason that the patriarchy and the whole patriarchal kind of system was, brought into place was due to the fact that there had been a matriarchal system before. So when men get hurt enough, we react and we explode, and then that's what created our world today. So the answer to harmony is not one or the other; it's balance of both. And that's like, this is the type of knowledge that was only available to like the extreme aesthetics, or like in India, the yogis, the
The
extreme
alchemists.
people that just studied and meditated on a cave all day. We don't need to do that anymore because we have, yeah, exactly. We have access to both of them now, which is incredible. So we have to use that to our advantage. We can't be so focused on, and we see a lot of guys nowadays too that are so focused on the masculine and not embracing the feminine, which is unfortunate, because the feminine is here and we have to embrace that too. Likewise, a lot of women, if you neglect the masculine, you neglect order in your life, and you wonder why you're going through the same patterns, same habits, same cycles over and over and over again. And then you get hurt, and you get hurt, and you get hurt. And then, we have to break the cycle, and we break the cycle through balance and being aware of what's going on. And the only way we can be aware of what's going on is by being really, really present to what is, which, by the way, presence is a masculine quality.
Very much so. I love everything that you just said. I just want to make a point, as you're sitting between two of the knights here at the High Vibe Studios, that the masculine back in the day, when you were bringing up on how like masculine is pure form, is kind of like this, warrior / kind of just take whatever it wants. So it reminds me of like back when, I don't know, the last time Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter were together in Capricorn in the 1200s, there was this notion of like knights and having this honor and having chivalry. And with chivalry, it's like, yes, you can bring that masculine out and be in a jousting and go lead a charge in a war. But the story of Lancelot and King Arthur in the Round Table was the understanding of where chivalry began, believe it or not. And it was with, bowing to the woman and the feminine and honoring it, and not kind of like the typical townsman, let's say, who would just get home and do his blacksmith and just be like, come here, wench. Like, that's what made a knight a higher order, which really is not like higher. It's just in alignment with service, honor, chivalry. And I think that for masculine, that's what to look at, is that you can still be a warrior, you can still be your badass self, but understanding chivalry and understanding to honor the feminine. And that kind of crossbreeds that into sexuality, where it's like, there's so many girls saying they haven't had an orgasm from a guy ever. Like there's this, women can become very untrusting. So what happens with that? Like, it becomes more masculine. And I would say that an orgasm, of course, is a combination of both, but
you shut down.
But then there's something about knowing we're going to open it up. Like masturbation on your own is something that teaches you how to receive yourself. And so there becomes this form too of like knowing how to receive. That's what sex is. It's the 8th house. It's Scorpio. It's about receiving with trust. And masculine energy is a give force. And so there becomes this masculine quality of needing to like bow and honor in a new way. I mean, there is this form of consent now by appreciation. There's different love languages for this, but a lot of it is showing up with chivalry. But then once the doors open, the masculine is here to allow the feminine to fully receive. Which I think that's hard for a lot of feminine to do, is like not knowing how to receive it. Like wanting to almost push it away, or let me be the one to give it and be that. And then that's creating for the masculine, we don't get turned on as much.
Yeah, the overcompensation.
Right, we don't. Like I can go to a strip club, and if it's like I'm not able to give, like it's like, sorry, that doesn't turn me on.
Yeah,
so funny.
That's a great analogy, actually, because it's true. Like, for example, women get like the feminine gets aroused by being offered gifts. And I don't just mean physical gifts, but gifts can be your presence, gifts can be your focus, gifts can be your awareness. Gifts can be a feeling of safety. Gifts can be financial security. Gifts can be, being taken out on a date. These are all the things that as a man, we are giving. And the whole essence, the primary essence of masculinity and the divine masculine is to be the unconditional giver. And the primary essence of the divine feminine is to be the unconditional receiver. And to receive means to accept, and to give means to give with zero expectations. And as men, the problem is, and when you hear this in toxic, examples or lower levels of the masculine embodiments, where people are like, oh, I give and give and give, and she just never, she never appreciates, or she never thanks me. It's like, well, like, why are you giving? If you're expecting a result, like if you're expecting to, like, I'm giving because I'm waiting for your response, it's like, that's not unconditional giving. And in the same way, if women are just receiving, but they're expecting you to give more, in the same way, that's not a balanced a state, right? It's not a balanced state, and that's the
it's like sugar daddies and stuff.
Again, that flow. Yeah, exactly.
So I think I think we've covered a lot on this space. I wanted to switch subjects here to the astrology community. I feel like it's been in a very really scattered place, right? We've got astro memes, we've got astrologers that don't do horoscopes, and it's great. Astrology's booming. But I feel that, there's something about like niche astrology is something now out there where I feel as an astrologer, if you're going to call yourself an astrologer, it's about being able to do all of it. Like not just one form. Like it's like,
definitely.
No, you can do horoscopes.
Or at least know how to do multiple things,
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's the issue is when people are doing in these sub niches that we see nowadays pretty popularly. What happens is you just stop learning, and when you stop learning, you become dumb, and no one wants to be a dumb astrologer. Okay, you want to keep learning. Like if you think that you've learned enough, you need to learn more. You haven't learned anything. Okay, because it's a continual journey. I can tell you after studying it for going on over 7 years now, that I know nothing, and I'm mentoring people, and I admit this to all my students, like I know nothing, because the moment that I think I know, and Socrates said this, and he says the only thing I know is that I don't know anything. And it's true, because we're always learning, we're always growing, and it's like, I'm sure you know this too, when you learn something new, you add it to your practice, and then your practice completely changes. You, like, for example, like when I started integrating like more esoteric and looking at the more soul-centered perspective to my consultations, first of all, naturally I started attracting more people who were interested in that, but also now that just gets blended into what I already knew. So, I practice traditional methods, like sect and like day and night charts, and I use that a lot in my practice. But I also practice the evolutionary astrology and the nodes and Pluto and esoteric at soul center level. And I just I'm just this like, orgy of astrological insights and understandings. But that's the way that everyone should do it, in my opinion, because if you're just drawing on one source, you're going to have a bias. And that's a problem in the community now, is that because this is where you see this bickering back and forth. It's like, if you have time to continually bicker about what's going on, versus just studying and learning and understanding that they're all just different perspectives of the same thing, that's where we're at now, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're in a funny place because I think people want the title of astrologer now.
And it's very easy because no one's giving them out.
Well, yeah, some people are giving them out, I guess. There's the boards, right? Yeah, there's ISAR, there's NCGR, and so forth.
That's the problem, though. That's the problem, too. And we've talked about this before, where now that there is certifications, like, does a certification make you a good astrologer? Hell no. Like, you gotta
I know, I will admit, even like, there's like Kepler College, right? Like, there's Kepler. And it's like, I know astrologers who, believe it or not, are pretty big, and they went there, and then I'll be talking about a bunch of stuff and they just can't even keep up. And they're like, how do you do that? And I'll be like, you didn't learn that in your school? Like,
yeah, like how many thousands of dollars did you spend
like,
on that?
well, yeah, and they don't also teach in a lot of these schools or any of these boards the magic or the alchemical, hermetic, even just the psychic part of being an astrologer. It's just like just the analytical, just the angular, just like the medieval to the traditional to the esoteric. A little. They don't really go into as much esoteric. It's kind of like a light little subject.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And
I think that actually brings us back to that point too, because like of the masculine feminine polarities, like even in the astrological community, you see there's this like overly masculine that tends to usually be around the traditional type of astrology, like medieval astrology, Hellenistic astrology, traditional astrology. It's very masculine oriented. It was all developed by men pretty much, and backed by Christianity at the time. And I mean, obviously there were a lot of esoteric understandings then, but they didn't talk about it because everyone just knew it, Nowadays we don't know that stuff, so if you just look at the texts as they are, what happens is it's just a lot of linear stuff. It's like this means this and this means this, and when this is in this angle or this has this degree, this means this thing. Whereas that intuitive side, which is something that you and I both bring to the table like very, very well, and one thing I really, really admire about you is like we just get into that flow state, where it's like that's what matters, because the fact is it doesn't matter really what angle Uranus is making to your fourth house right now, but it does matter that you understand what the hell that means, and that's the important part. Very true.
And I think that as well, I saw something actually quite disturbing on Twitter recently, and it was from a friend of mine, Sam Reynolds, and I'm part of ISAR. And the tweet was something about the election in 2016 and how the whole board predicted Hillary to win. And they looked negatively on astrology because the mainstream news ran with that this astrology community doesn't know what they're doing, basically, because all the astrologers predicted Hillary to win. When that's not true. There's a lot of astrologers who predicted Trump to win. And
said Leo King, I think.
Yeah, there was a guy named the Leo King who was putting it out for literally over a year. But it was interesting because the tweet was something about saying that in the community, as far as in the board, about finding a way to stop or to limit astrology to make predictions in public, to not hurt the community, almost as if to kind of like limit the voices of what astrology is, where I feel like in science, how many different articles do we get a day that this school or this science board come out with theories all the time or whatever it is, and that's just the way it is.
And predictions, by the way.
They're all predictions.
In the 70s, the Time magazine was posting that there's literally multiple covers saying that there's global cooling, and they predict that by the mid 2000s that the world would be basically in the ice age, and now they're saying the opposite. So it's like, the same thing's going to happen in the astrological community. The reason being is because there's humans involved, and humans have biases.
It's true. I know. I'm really concerned about that though, because it's like, first of all, like the board picked the people to be on there. Huh?
Like how do you limit the voice of someone predicting something or not? Like what's stopping
I would
me
say
or you from going
that
on
this
our
is
Instagram
where
and
the
saying
boards and the organizations are having issues. Is that one, there are people like you, like you have tens of thousands of followers on Instagram. These organizations have they're lucky if they have 3,000. They're lucky.
Exactly.
And they're the ones projecting themselves as the
people that are following.
Like they're the ones projecting themselves as this is like where astrology is, organized. And then when they do like United Astrology Conference, it's 5 boards. and they all get together, and then they all get, if you're on the board, you get 2 speaking aspects automatically. So even if you put out a book in 1981 about Mars and you haven't done anything since, not a horoscope, not a reading, you can go talk, but you're on the board.
Yeah, and then they're very, very selective of other people who are not involved in the organizations to come and speak, which is a bias in itself.
And you know, a lot of it is, if you kind of go against it or say anything about it, then you're kind of like I was demonized in 2018. There's actually a YouTube video out there, like it says leaked UAC video, because I was saying things about it, and I was at UAC, and I had a booth there for the 8 days, and I was doing a video with this woman named Nadia, who was on the NCGR board for over 20 years, and she put the video interviewing me about what I was going to do there. We were trying to do a lot of things. I made a lot of proposals about doing live stream, a YouTube, astrologer, what do you call it, like panel out there to bring in more funds, to also get more attentions for the boards, and it was all niched. It was all pushed away, and they didn't load the video, and then they fired her off the board. So she released the video to show it. And it was very difficult. The first thing that happened when I walked into United Astrology Conference of 2018, and Craig was there, Ray Merriman, who's part of the topper echelons of these boards, walks in and says, "Oh, there's the troublemaker of the astrology community." A very welcoming way to walk into that place, as I just spent hours or days traveling there, touring, and 3 Uber black, you know, like SUVs to bring everything in, because in Chicago, when you bring things for a booth, and if you have a truck, you can't drive a truck in Chicago. So you have to go to a lot, park your truck, and have Ubers take you all your stuff to the hotel. And the first thing that they walk in is just demonize you.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll call out Ray Merriman every day of the week. I'll call him out right here. Like, he never apologized. He never said anything nice. And I just thought it was really messed up. But, you know, I'm not here to get in arguments. I'm just here to say that the organizations are dying. And they're dying because they're not connecting with people. They are making predictions that are of their own validity, of political aspects, of their own ideologies, instead of being hermetic and looking at both sides and not taking a side, but actually looking at what the astrology says.
Yeah. And that's the important thing, and that's what I'm seeing. And I mean, that's what we're bringing to the community right now is that more progressive side of astrology, where, first of all, like, the fact that these boards and these organizations are not utilizing technology to the highest capability that they could be, just shows how old the boards are, you know. And I have nothing against any of the boards whatsoever, but at the same time, I see a time and place for it, and the time right now is unity. And what I see a lot of these astrological organizations doing is creating divisiveness. And even though they kind of veil it as, oh, but we have lots of different types of astrology, but at the same time, it's like it's still very, very biased. So yeah, we're in an age where all of that is just being dug up from the surface, and now we're getting into a time where what's really important is understanding it. It's like, yeah, the theory is important. You have to know how to read it. Like, you have to know what the hell the Mercury symbol means, you know? You have to know what an angle means. You have to know what all these things mean. But that's great if you know what they mean, but if you don't know what they actually symbolize and what they represent to you and how you can decode it all together, you know? I tell my students, it's just like, astrology is just like peeling an onion. You know, you think you're done with one layer, and then there's another one underneath, and another one underneath, and another one underneath, and it's just the continual layer on layer on layer on layer. And you have to somehow piece that all together as an astrologer and see the whole picture being pieced together, which is the craziest part about the work that we do.
It's very crazy. And I have nothing against the boards either, but I think that when you bring up unity, that's the thing, is what happened during UAC of 2018 was there was a lot of propositions made to the board, which is the main board, which is where exclusive board members of the individual boards go to make the decisions. And it was about unity was what was being brought up, and especially to help these, like, I'll be honest, I bet you that probably 90% of the viewers that watch this don't even know who these boards are, and they're into astrology.
Yeah, I know exactly.
So my whole point to them was like, let's live stream, let's do this. I was like gonna do it for free. I even said I would. I have the cameras. This is what I do well, bringing people into the community. But there's this whole thing, and I have the email that it literally says like, no, this will make other astrologers feel like they're inferior, or that they're not being, I don't know, like I forgot the exact term. I'll have to go back to the email, but basically that's what it was, is it didn't want to make these astrologers who made their whole career feel like they are not getting the attention that they deserve, instead of the attention on these new people that are coming in that are doing way more, like, and it's not even a comparison, but it's just like, this is how else you're going to need help. Like, you're starving yourself. And afraid to let in everybody. And that's something that is, I think, terrifying for the astrology community, is like, I love it. I follow meme sites. I follow people who do this or do that or whatever. I will talk to all of them. I will integrate all of them. And I think that it's a beautiful thing right now, but I don't think that there is a community right now. I don't think that there is a board that is about embodying the whole community. And I'm terrified to see this article that, one of the ISAR, and I'm friends with Samuel, so I'm not calling him out, but I really was in almost like a disbelief that they were going to start trying to find a way to limit the ability of astrologers, especially from their board, or I don't know where they were going with it, but to limit who is putting out the information.
Well, that's the only thing that they can do, right? Well, that's the only thing they can do. They can't, because there's no gatekeepers on the internet. If I want to go and post a video, I'm going to post a video. And if people watch that because it's damn good content, they're going to watch that because it's damn good content. Like the certificates, I belong to this board, that board, whatever, like, that's irrelevant anymore. And that's the problem, is where these boards have been around since like the 70s, 80s and all of that, where, these are great opportunities to bring people together, and they still are. Like, I'm probably going to go to, the ESAR conference next year or whatever. I don't know yet. I haven't decided if I'm going to go to ESAR or AFA or whatever, right? But like, at the same time, now there's no gatekeepers, and that's a pro. And then there's also cons, being that anyone can say that they're an astrologer. So I get the point of boards, but they're not doing it right. They're not with it.
Right. And I think that what's going on is, like, we'll use, for example, like, these TV shows call me up and I go on. They don't go through the board to get a hold of me.
Yeah, right? They're like, can we see your top astrologer, please?
Well, and that's, I think, the issue.
Can we see the oldest astrologer that you have there and interview him for whether or not Hailey Bieber and Justin Bieber are going to be together? It's like, no, that would never happen, because look at just the structure of how it's made, And
well, I think that's the scary part, is that the traditional astrology community tends to think that pop culture, anything popular in pop culture, is almost like you're a sellout, kind of how music is, right? Or that, that it's not just this deep thing, when it's like, why can't you bridge the deep all over? Like I'll sit here and do deep astrology and go to the deepest elements and esoteric to traditional to medieval to teaching to then going on ET and talking about Justin Bieber and Halle and if whether or not they're going to work out and looking at how Justin next year is going to have Neptune on his Venus. And has he thought about that with Venus being his 7th house ruler and with Neptune being, his 4th house ruler, and about family and pregnancy and like getting married right now, and he's got deep Pluto in the 12th, like and he's a Scorpio rising, like there's a lot to look at there, and I don't think that that's a negative thing.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, like, now that we're in this day and age, we got technology, anybody can talk about what they want to talk about. The best part about that is that if you're saying real stuff that is giving people a lot of value consistently on a daily basis, in your case you've been doing it since like 2012, like that's how you've grown into what you've created today. It's because you've been giving real value. You haven't been focusing on the politics of the community. You haven't been focusing on like, let's keep up with the traditions. It's like, no, let's create, let's innovate, let's create something new, let's pave the way. Let's continue to use the technology and the thing that we have here, Age of Aquarius technology. Like, let's integrate this into our experience, our reality, and use it to move forward, not backwards. Like, we can't deny the fact that technology is here to stay.
No, I know.
Like,
even if the power grid did go out, I'd turn my generator on.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd be live streaming still.
I'd be live streaming still. Yeah, exactly. I'll find a way,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I want to kind of keep it open now as we close here. Is there anything that you want to kind of finish up or anything that you want to wrap up with here that you feel that didn't come out yet?
I mean, I feel like because we did get a little distracted talking about the politics of the community, but I think like maybe we should just wrap it up with the current astrology here.
Yeah, I like that. What are you feeling?
Well, so this is a really interesting time that we're in right now collectively. I mean, first, as we're recording this, we're moving into the full moon this weekend, which is square Pluto and trine Jupiter. Like, this is a big one for a lot of us, of finally undoing a lot of the programming that we have been given and gifted with, as I like to say, to unravel, to, as Mercury begins to station into its shadow period before retrograde. And Mercury's in Scorpio, by the way. So this is all taking place during this full moon, like, because tomorrow is Mercury stations is shadow period.
That's why I got my taxes done today.
Yeah, we move into yeah, we were just talking about that before. That's funny. Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, this full moon is really bringing out like our desire. The deepest level of Aries is understanding how we can best use and wield the power of our willpower. That's why I like that.
Nichols,
my name
Aries.
Is Will. Aries, Sun, Venus, conjunct in the second house.
I know.
So yeah, in the same way, it's about wielding the will and learning how to harmonize with the will, and not in an imbalanced way, because a lot of times we think that we need to force our will onto other people for us to get what we want. We need to force things to happen. It doesn't mean that we don't need to assert ourselves, and that's really what Aries teaches us on the highest level, is how we can assert ourselves, how we can push forward, how we can, enact cardinal fire, like fire being transformation, transmutation, and cardinal being progression, movement forward. With both of these like happening, and then we have the beautiful, sun in Libra, and like Libra season is always an interesting time of the year because we're generally focused on creating harmony within ourselves and our relationships and creating that sense of balance and getting everything kind of figured out. But then we always have a full moon in Aries, and full moon in Aries is like, how can we, now assert ourselves into what is it that I want? What is it that I'm desiring? What is it that I want to do? Where is it that I want to go? And hey, if that also happens to be in the same direction that you want to go, then let's go together. Let's hold hands along the way. But if it doesn't, full moon square Pluto too, like, it's all coming down. It's breaking down. Sometimes we have to break down for us to break through. And when we can see it like that, though, that's the important part, is being able to understand that this is a building block. I always think about squares as building blocks, because they, you think of bricks as, square shapes of, we're building things on top of each other. Doesn't mean that it's always comfortable. Sometimes it means that our perspectives are challenged, and that's the, the beauty of squares. And, I personally, in synastry, like, I love squares. I love when people have squares, not too many, and depending on the planets and stuff, but squares are great opportunities for growth. Yeah, exactly. You do want some harmony there.
You want some tension.
Yeah. But then again, I've had relationships in the past where we've had lots of conjunctions, lots of trines, beautiful things, but we're too similar because of that, And I like versatility.
Or it's
my
like
Venus is in Aries. It's like,
it's like laying on a couch.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like we're not doing anything, Exactly. So yeah, no, I feel that in the same way, whereas squares give us an opportunity to grow. Now, bless up for this trine to Jupiter as well. I think we were talking about this the other day. This is like the saving grace for us to help to integrate this and actually move forward. Instead of just trying to destroy, it's like destroy and create, destroy and create continuously.
Yeah, well, this is the last time that both the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are going to be in a great aspect of Jupiter together.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And then as long as it's in its home sign, of course, in Sag, which is a big deal. And this is also the last solar aspect to Jupiter. While Jupiter's in Sagittarius, that's positive because it's in its waning aspect till the conjunction in Capricorn on Christmas night.
Yeah.
So this is this big shifting, especially getting into 2020 with Saturn Pluto at the beginning, January 12th, and the lunar eclipse is January 10th. And this is it's a lot of choice. And I feel that Aries is the spark and Libra they're the pillars, they're the pillars of good and evil.
Divine
Libra, the balance.
Divine feminine.
And then coming into the Garden of Eden is Aries. So there's this also Chiron element there in Aries. And it's like, we don't have to go off this idea of projection of ego or identity. I think we have to go from our true nature, our more humbled state, and we have to hold hands together, like you said. I like that analogy. But I feel the Pluto square is an unprogramming, like you say. And it's also a deep shed. Like, let's unshed these old identities and these relationships that don't work, because we form identity off relationship. We form relationship off identity. We are at a place to where if it does not align anymore.
That's not always a bad thing either.
Yeah. No, it's not. But I think the Pluto is saying that, hey, if it's not on the path of this Capricornian destined path of a change I'm making about the world, about our long-term goals in an individual's life, about what you really want to achieve, like, I'm sorry, like, this is just no. And use Jupiter and Sag to go experience what is of that true nature, and that it's okay to be the snake right now and shed a lot of skin. There's a lot of Scorpio going on, and it's Venus opposed Uranus at the same time. And it's like, hey, let's go to this Taurian new way. So it's okay to, like, let go emotionally of situations that you've been overly obsessed about, or that you've been putting way too much in, or putting way too much receiving. Like, this is going to be scary for some people who are in that state of unconsciousness where they're not aware of, they're either receiving too much or giving too much, or they're identifying too much or not identifying themselves. Like, this is going to be all of that at once in a big show. Bam.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always mean completely destroying relationships or destroying what's going on. A lot of times it just means destroying the perspective that you've been having.
Yeah.
And when we can do that, like, especially with like Mercury and Scorpio getting ready for its retrograde motion, like, this is while we're in this shadow period beforehand, it's all about, like, how are we really seeing reality? Are we seeing it clearly, like, in a really balanced and open way, or are we seeing it in this, like, flawed, like, biased perspective? It's like, do we have that sense of balance, or is it like this imbalance here where, just like you were saying, are we giving too much? Like maybe we need to step back and take a little break, you know, from just how we're doing it. It's not always about what is going on, because like we were saying in the beginning, like what's going on out there is irrelevant. It's what's going on in here that matters. So it's not that we have to force all this shit to change outside of ourselves, but it's like, what needs to change within us so that we can redirect, you know, where our energy is being brought forth right now. And that's, I mean, I love the Venus-Uranus opposition for this, is that it's the great redirector, Uranus, with Venus, which is love and harmony and relationships. And in Scorpio, I mean, Venus is not very happy in Scorpio, but it's about the unraveling. It's about the undoing. So what beliefs and paradigms have you had about relationships, and how can you undo those? How can you be pulled to a higher perspective? I love to give the analogy of Uranus as being like the claw, you know, in those claw machines.
Right.
And it just brings us up the vibrational, you know, to the actual reality, or the vibrational state where we are supposed to be, you know.
Which is in Taurus, which is a more better quality, happier, more valued, grounded, and it feels better up there. Like, I'm sorry to say, Taurus is one of the best signs for feeling good.
It's true.
It feels good to have money in your pocket. It feels good to be in a new pair of clothes. It feels good to undo a new iPhone. If there's something weird about that. Sure, it doesn't last forever, but there is something that's what it wants. There's that food that you just ate, that you just spent an hour to go cook, and it tasted so good for that second. You know what? There's something that brings value to you in that.
Absolutely. And there's this element of, when you take enough time to invest in awareness and cultivating a deeper sense of awareness for what's going on in your inner world, not only do you watch the outer world change, but you just feel better. Like, you feel so much better in knowing that it's not always about me having to change, or my partner having to change, or the people or the situations or my job or whatever having to change, but it's about just like, when I have a desire of something that I really want in my life, like, I can't feel guilty about that, right? And I feel like a lot of the beliefs that are being brought up right now are like removing all the guilt, all the fear, all the crap that is preventing us from just feeling good about it. If you have a desire for something, you have to know that it's yours. You have to know that it is yours, because if you didn't desire it, it wouldn't be yours. You know, you can't desire something that isn't already yours. So if you have the desire, and you know, like, really feel it, and you remove all the muck that's in the way, the resistance, you know. If you follow like Abraham Hicks, you know, she talks about that a lot, of just letting go of the resistance, so that you can just, because you're always in a state of allowance, you're always in a state of harmony, but there's all these layers over top of you. It's you pinching yourself off from your own source, from your highest, you know, expression of your energy, or your higher self. And that's what causes suffering, and that's what causes us to feel like shit, and run into the same situations over and over again, and just continue to relive the programming and all the crap, you know, over and over again. And so, yeah, if you feel like you're struggling right now, pay attention to what beliefs are holding you where you are. Because if you want to move forward and you have beliefs that are holding you back, you're not going to move forward, and you're going to feel very uncomfortable trying to, like, you're like, it's like one arm is going here, one arm is going there, and you're being pulled apart, you know. And that's not we need to, again, and like we were talking about this whole broadcast, balance, harmony, harmonizing both sides of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think Pluto is uncovering also too, individually, are you really in alignment with integrity? And you know, because if you're trying to live this harmonious life, and you're trying to live this life of the things that you want to have, and a lot of Scorpio energy is asking for that too. Both Aries and Scorpio are very similar as far as desire and want and identification of that. They know very well what they want. And Pluto's there in Capricorn being like, you know, are you really of integrity? Like, are you still selling drugs and really thinking that you're going to go pay your taxes and have the house that you want? Are you really thinking that you can go get married because that person, that significant other, is running the drugs, or you're prostituting them out? Or, you know, like, Pluto is going to bring up all these weird things of like, oh, I want this in my life, or I want this relationship, or I want this thing in my life. But it's like, well, okay, like, that's nice, but do you really think you can get there? Like, Pluto's a police officer. It's like, hello, you're not following the rules. Like, this is not how reality kind of works. It's going to bring up all those things of like very basic fundamental beliefs all the way down to fundamental, integral, real steps on how to get where you want to go in life, and see if you're actually on the trail to do that, or if you've been Plutonian into obsessed of fighting it your own way instead of following the steps to take you to truly how to get there.
Exactly. And Pluto makes big things small and small things big. So if you have big problems going on in your life that are causing a lot of irritations, Pluto's going to just like give you that outer macro perspective and be like, what are you worried about? Like, why are you so worried about this? Why are you giving all your attention to this? And if there is something that you've just been really avoiding and you haven't been like thinking, you're like, this is, I can just avoid this. I can just keep this under the covers. It's like Pluto's going to be like,
boom.
Look at this right now. Be aware of what the hell's going on. Look at fucking what is here right now, because this is what matters. We want to get to there, but we can't problem because there's no there. It's only here.
It's only here, brother. Well, I'm glad that you're here on this planet. I'm glad that we got to do this today. I've been on your podcast, and I'm so happy that I was able to bring you on my network to do this. So how do people find you?
Brother, I appreciate it so much. You can find me on Instagram at I am Will Nichols. If you want to get triggered, follow me on Twitter at I am Will Nichols. And if you want to book a consultation or work with me, you can go to my website, willnicholsastrology.com. And I do mentorship too. I have a few spots available. So if you're looking to
you also have your new text message service.
Yeah, Astrotext. So you can also go to astrotext.org if you want to get daily transit updates via text message. So that's another project that I'm working on. Doing lots of things just like you are, and because that's how we keep rolling. We're what are we, manifesting generators or something like that?
Yep,
MGs. Yeah. Gotta keep that.
Well, I love you, bro, and I appreciate your insight.
No, I appreciate
and I want everybody
so much,
to know
bro.
that I trust Will with astrology so much, and you're just more than an astrologer. You're a great friend, and I appreciate you being on the planet.
Oh, brother, I love you so much. Thanks for having me on here, and thank you to everyone who was watching us tonight. And yeah, if you resonated with this, let us know what your thoughts are on all
Put
this.
in the comments, and Will and I will write back to people, and we'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, brother.
Live or something.
Well, yeah, everyone, thanks for checking out Will Nichols with me today. And thanks for being a part of highvibe.tv. Check us out. We're on highvibe.tv. We have awesome apps. You're not going to want to miss them. And we have a lot of new stuff coming out. We have new shows, and we have notifications coming out on November 1st. And we have the community element in the app and on the website coming out on November 1st. So definitely check it out right now. Go to highvibe.tv. Thanks so much again, Will. Thanks everybody out there. And we'll see you next time here on highvibe.tv.
It's so exciting that the spiritual community is on the rise, but finding a spiritual network that's just as exciting is daunting. I mean, all this old regurgitated content from 10 years ago and old footage, and then of course you've got the light and fluffy stuff out there that just makes for a good meme and just makes you feel like, okay, and get left with that depth, that connection. And that's what High Vibe TV is all about, raising the vibration with exclusive daily, weekly, curated content with our in-house studios, all about astrology, tarot, intuition, doing curated talk shows about art, about going even deeper into the universe, aliens. We talk about it all, connecting with your guides, human design, whatever is new and cutting edge and part of this new age, it's all on here on highvibe.tv. Check us out on our apps on iOS, Android, Roku, and we're on Apple TV. Or go to highvibe.tv. We have live shows. We connect with our audience. It's all about the community. Raise your vibration now. Check us out, highvibe.tv.